Talk shoes.
Recorded live.
Hello, and welcome to the Castle Dracula podcast, Double Date Edition. On this podcast, we talk about horror movies, vampire movies, and all-around awesomeness. And this week, not only am I stopped up by ragweed, so I sound like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but we continue our sexy vampire retrospective with a special guest, who I'll introduce in a minute. We are covering the finale of Hammer Horror's famous Karnstein Trilogy, also known as the Carmilla Cycle. Tonight's movie, Twins of Evil, from 1971, stars Peter Cushing and a pair of beautiful twins, Maltese twins, called Madeline and Mary Collinson. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have, so warning, spoilers ahead. I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the new Alex Van Helsing adventure, Triumph of Death, in hardback and ebook from HarperCollins. With me are Drew Edwards, creator of the long-running horror webcomic Halloween Man, which you can find at HalloweenMan.com. Say hello, Drew.
Hello, Drew.
Special guest, Jamie Barr, a musician, pinup model, educator, and the lead vocalist and upright bassist for Austin's premier all-female rock and roll, and I would have said rockabilly band, Danger Cakes, and you can find info on their new album, Dessert First, from Deep Eddy Records at dangercakes.net. Say hello, Jamie.
Hello.
Hello. And, as always, with color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello, Julia.
Hi, and I want to say that Danger Cakes is awesome.
Danger Cakes is awesome.
Thanks.
You have such character on stage. It was really, really captivating, and we had a great time. So,
well, thank you.
All right.
Hopefully, that will transcribe here tonight. A little different than rocking out on stage, you know.
This will be fun. This has an opportunity for you to embarrass yourself in many, many more ways. I'm sure you will acquit yourself wonderfully, but I tend to just get confessional after the first 90 minutes, and so the best stuff comes out once we get really tired. Okay, Twins of Evil goes back about 150 or so years before the other two movies in the Karnstein cycle, so it's kind of a prequel. Maria and Frida, two beautiful gals, come from Venice to Karnstein in Central Europe to live with their uncle Gustav Weil. Weil is a stern Puritan and leader of the fanatical witch-hunting brotherhood. Both twins resent their uncle's sternness, but one of them, Frida, looks for a way to escape. Resenting her uncle, she becomes fascinated by the local Count Karnstein, who has a reputation for being a wicked man, and indeed he is. Karnstein has started doing satanic human sacrifices and has been turned into a vampire by the revived Mircalla Karnstein, who was the lead of the other two movies, but makes merely a cameo in this one. Soon, Frida is on the side of the Count, while Maria runs the risk of being blamed and even killed by the vengeful Puritans. That's the movie. We're going to get into it. What kind of movie is Twins of Evil? Well, there are creepy castles, there are torches, there are evil Puritans, there's Peter Cushing, there are vampires with crazy teeth, there are buxom women in flowy robes and chiffon. In short, we are back in the Hammerscape, and it looks beautiful. So, first impressions, let's go Drew, Julia, Jamie, and then me. Drew, take it away. First impressions, Twins of Evil.
Well, as I was saying before we started recording, this was a lot of fun. The last time I had seen this movie, I was a teenager, and for some reason, and maybe it's just because I coupled it up with the other two Carmilla films, I thought this was going to be a lot more lurid and sleazy.
Yeah. And
honestly, this is a fairly, I won't say tasteful. Tasteful is definitely the wrong word. But this is a good flick. You know, it's a lot of fun, and even though this is pure, unadulterated Hammer in many respects, it's kind of turning the Hammer formula on its head a little bit, because for the first time we have a horror film where there really are, I mean, there are good people in this movie, but it's not good guys versus bad guys. It is evil, witch-burning Puritans on horseback versus devil-worshipping vampire aristocrats. And that's
also
great
evil.
to me.
Just to be clear, they are right. The Puritans are bad, and the vampires are also bad. And the world is complicated.
There are no really among our protagonists. There are no real good guys. And this ends up being a great showcase for Peter Cushing, who is sort of Hammer's ultimate good guy. And to see him play a character in a vampire movie, because you've seen him in the Frankenstein films play a bad guy, but to see him play sort of this cold-hearted of a person in a Hammer vampire movie is amazing. And a lot of the acting he does just with his face is great. And, you know, I'm a pretty big Peter Cushing fan, and if it was possible, I think this movie has made me an even bigger Peter Cushing fan. So that's my 2 cents.
That's fantastic. All right, Julia, our usual.
Yes.
You used to call yourself the token female, and you are token no longer because now
a fellow female. It's so exciting.
Yes. This is the very first time, by the way, that we've had 2 females on the show. Oh no, that's not true.
That is not true.
That's not true. We did.
Guest
Oh
host.
yeah, I apologize. I apologize for even saying that. The moment it came out of my mouth, I remembered. Interview with the vampire. Right. Anyway. Okay, so Julia, though.
Yes. Okay. Well, first I want to respond to a couple things Drew said. Number one is if you don't think of Peter Cushing as a bad guy generally, then you're forgetting his awesome Grand Moff Tarkin performance in Star Wars. And
you know,
second,
I never really think of him as Star Wars. I always think of him as Hammer first, Star Wars second.
Sure. Yeah. True. But he was a bad guy, and he was a good one. And then as far as the good guys go, there are a couple of good guys, and that would be like Maria, the sister, is a really good person. Like, I mean, she just seems to be a good-hearted, person. So I think there are some good protagonists in this movie, but they're definitely of the victim sort rather than the hero sort. But I think it's a really good film. I agree that there's a lot of interesting things about it. I mean, the fact that there are these different shades of evil is really interesting. And then you have the evil sister. And by the way, the twins are Playboy Playmates. This where they found these twins. And they're from a country called Malta, which we didn't remember where exactly that was. Turns out that's the island that Italy kicks. The boot, the Italy is a boot.
Yes.
Malta. So, so that's interesting. But so I thought that those characters I thought it was kind of neat to put these twins and have them be so different from each other, and have that play into the story. And then I liked just all the dimensions to it. I mean, and then you have the good guy of
Anton. Yeah, Anton.
Right, Anton. He's a real good guy, and he is a hero type. So there's different. There are some real good guys, and then there's some bad good guys, and then some other bad good guys, because the fact is that both of the bad guys are opposing another bad guy, and so that kind of makes them good guys at different points.
Yeah.
It's kind of a Freddy versus Jason setup.
Exactly.
It really is.
Versus evil.
Yeah. So, but I thought there were some neat, really neat pieces to it. There wasn't so much of the gratuitous, Skinamaxy stuff going on, which was good for me. And I'm trying to remember, there was something else I wanted to say about it, but I'll think of it and say it later. So
okay.
That's it for now.
Thank you very much. And okay, Jamie Vilkomen, once again, I'm very happy that you're here.
Thank you.
And it's very rare that we have a guest, because for people are wondering, we haven't fired poor Tony. He has not quit. He's just at Fantastic Fest laughing at us. So that's what's going on. I am home with this stupid ragweed. I can't breathe, and Tony is watching amazing movies, and luckily we have Jamie with us. So, Jamie, your first impressions. Give us a couple of riffs on what's going on with Twins of Evil.
Well, I was. Like Julia, I was kind of glad that it was less like Lust for a Vampire than the other
Lust for a Vampire is a
like
fun.
The Skinamax aspects of it on the occasion. I kind of, I'm like, yeah, that's what Hammer's in for,
Yeah.
gore and cleavage, amongst other things. So, but hey, I think this was the first one. There was some bush. I thought that was kind of risque, being that it was, the 70s. Although, obviously there's a lot of bush because it was the 70s. So,
Did it really? I didn't. I guess I completely missed that.
I guess I'm just a perv. I just look for things.
No. Or it could be that I have a more cut version than you have. You know, that's always possible, because it could be the version that we saw was just extremely sliced down, because there were some.
Yeah, I didn't notice it either, so I think you might.
No, where?
I'll point out the bush when they are about to sacrifice the one chick, and they have like they're draping a sheet over her, and you see bush.
No. There was no FFN in the version that I saw. No, so I believe you, but
FFN? I don't even know what that means.
Full frontal nudity. I don't know why.
No. I wouldn't call it full frontal. It was you could see
profile?
it through a sheer sheet.
Oh,
like,
it was
right before Karnstein goes to.
If you want more of that, actually, I recommend Dracula. What is it called? Satanic Rites of Dracula. Has so. Well, we're off to a good start. This is.
Right. But the movie itself, though, I have to say, I don't know if I liked it the best out of all three of the trilogy. I have a lot of twins in my family, and my mom is actually the only non-twin of her siblings, and I was married to Drew, who was a twin as well, and I kind of started always looking at the whole twin side of things, and it seems like there were a couple of kind of obvious, I don't know, is there such a thing as twinsploitation?
There is.
There definitely is.
Yeah, because it's kind of, it's like a little kinky. One's got to be good, one's got to be bad. Oh, no, I cut my fingers. Oh, my twin can feel it. There's all that. But, I don't know. There were things I liked. The music nerd of me got kind of peeved with Anton and his choir practices, which that's just me being my version of nerdery. Music nerdery, because he's singing horribly off key, which I think he'd be better. But there was apparently a lot of sound overdubbing with the movie. Apparently, most of the twins were also dubbed because of their thick Maltese accents. So, I just wonder why they wouldn't have gotten somebody who would have sung a little better for Anton. But
wouldn't it have been great to have heard them? Oh, go ahead, continue. Yeah.
Oh no, that was basically, that's coming up.
So the music. So that's. We'll come back to your thoughts on the music, actually. So you didn't dig their singing, but I'm curious. I'll give my 2 cents. First of all, one thing I really love about this movie, I love the score. The music, the singing went right over my head. I probably didn't pay any attention at all to it, and that's simply because that's not where I spend my time, right? So it would just go by. The score, that ba 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 ba. I mean, it's a great score, and
you know what I actually noticed about that? Strangely,
what's that?
Is that it sounds a lot like the theme music from the Justice League cartoon from the previous, last decade or so.
The one, the 90s one, right. It's true. Yeah,
very similar theme music.
That's a good point, and so it's possible that was just wheedling its way into my brain because I love that cartoon. That was a great cartoon, but this is a good score. It's stirring. It's not boring, and the movies like that as well. I was really. What I would really like, first impressions. This is indeed a vampire movie, but for the first time, in this trilogy, and really, frankly, in a lot of Hammer movies, there's the first time that the movie is pretty well constructed. There are a lot of dynamic pairs. The characters all have something to conflict with one another, to argue with one another. All the characters have sort of an exact opposite that they're ready to go argue with. They all have good things and bad things about them, and even, will bend. So that Peter Cushing, who plays this horrible Puritan who really deserves whatever is coming his way, even he goes through transformations and seems torn and seems pained at times. And so this movie is a heck of a lot better than it has to be, especially when you consider the last movie we watched was Lust for a Vampire, which was never better than it had to be. I mean, I like Lust for a Vampire, but this is actually a pretty good movie, and that was not, in any sense, a good movie. I recommend it.
That skeeved me out.
Say that again?
I said that one kind of skeeved me out.
Yeah. This is...
we had a teacher who, in high school, who actually got arrested for, being the same way that the character, that guy was, being kind of...
Oh, yeah, no, we had one of those, too, where a person becomes obsessed with a teacher, and then there's all the calling and the leaving messages on their answering machine. They're getting caught by one of
the teacher going after, this guy and coming on.
It depends on how old Carmilla was supposed to be in Lust for a Vampire. If Carmilla was figuring to be, 23... Then,
I don't know if finishing school is something is instead of college or if it's after college. I'm assuming it's instead of college, before, So she's probably 18.
Yeah, no, it's not really appropriate. But, that's the thing. That movie really is just, like I said, it's like Benny Hill without a lot of the jokes. I mean, it literally was just dirty old man sort of nonsense. This is not that. This actually spends some time thinking about how do we feel about religious persecution, and do we think that sometimes people punishing sexual mores are maybe just sort of living out this need to punish themselves, and so all that stuff gets brought up. Again, that's working a lot harder than this movie has to work, and that was pretty neat. I also got to say, it's kind of wild that the first film to feature Playboy centerfolds in the Hammer of actually is it's the least what would be the word? I don't know. It's the least Cinemaxy of all of these. Because Ingrid Pitt was taking off her top all the time, and so was everybody in the second movie. Jute Stensgaard had no problem. These women remain rather chastely clothed, really, most of the time.
Most of the time, there is a little bit of
Frida. It's still a Hammer movie. It's still an early '70s Hammer film. There's the truly chaste era of the late '50s Hammer, and then there's the early '70s era when everybody they still have the chiffon and the castles and the vampires, but everybody's topless. So,
but at least
someone's got to do the grandmother.
At least in this movie, they're topless either because they're being they're not even topless, but they're either being victimized, and so they're actually that's part of it. Or in the case of Frida, she's actually seducing the guy. It's not some doctor that's just decided to strip this woman in front of everyone while he examines her. That's the part that drives me crazy in all those movies. But in this one it was just Frida who's actually trying to make her move toward Anton.
Yeah, she's coming on to Anton. That's true, and I've never enjoyed. The thing in movies where they have a person being attacked by a crowd or whatever. So they're kind of trying to dredge up the fears of gang rape and the fears of sexual molestation, and they make the actress get naked, which just feels really sleazy. But none of that's going on here. They burn people alive, and the people keep their blouses on. So I don't know. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, I suppose. All right. So where to start? I think really the place to start here is tying this movie in because we've been making a big deal about how we're doing the Sexy Vampire Retrospective, and we're spending 3 movies in the Karnstein Trilogy of Hammer. And can somebody make sense to me out of what have we learned about this trilogy? If somebody were to say, hey, Jamie, Drew, there's a Karnstein Trilogy. Should I watch it? Does it make sense? Can you tell?
It makes sense. I mean, if your great-great-great-great-great-grandmother comes back from the dead and you do her, you're going to become a vampire. That's basically what this whole thing means. And someone might say, where do vampires come from? And that's what I would tell them. No, I'm just kidding.
It never occurred to me that she would be his great-great-great-great-grandmother. You think that's right?
Yeah, that's what she is.
When an evil count and his... When an evil count and his lich grandmother love one another very, very much, they can become vampires.
That's what happens.
As a trilogy, it doesn't really make a lot of cohesive sense. I have to say, now having seen all of these relatively close to one another, they work as kind of individual little vampire movies. They don't even have the tightness of continuity that the very loose continuity between the Dracula films has. Like these are basically a series of. They have their own rules. I will say this: they are consistent about their little vampire rules that they made up. Like vampires can't be burnt. Oh, you have to have the devil in your heart to become a vampire. They're consistent about that stuff. Yeah. But I mean, Carmilla is not even played by the same actress in each.
No
film.
2 times in a row. Yeah.
And it was kind of annoying that she just shows up and then she's inexplicably gone for the rest of the film.
Honestly, that didn't bother me because by this movie, I was kind of like, I mean, they would have done the same. She would have been posing as a debutante somewhere and. Seducing some other chick.
But a reason, though, a reason to go away. Maybe
she was off biting peasants off panel. It didn't bother me because the count was very.
I agree with you on that one. I think
the count was interesting.
Well, think about it though. If this had been Blood, we saw Blood and Roses, right? So one option that this movie could have taken is Mircalla could have inhabited the body of Frida. But that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Instead, they're more interested in Frida. Frida's freaking evil. I mean, when Frida, starts hanging out with the Count and becomes a vampire, and the vampires in the Karnstein Trilogy are, able to walk around in the earth. When like one character we've come to really sort of love in the one scene that sets her up dies, Frida smiles like a cat. I mean, and she's an evil little girl, whereas, her sister is just astonishingly good. I think, to answer the question about the trilogy, or to pick up where Drew left off, so, yeah, you're right. They're not a trilogy. I guess it's fair to say they're a cycle or a something. They're a set. I like that there's some attempt at. Well, here's the thing. Considering the movie doesn't really attempt to create continuity, nevertheless, there are so many pieces of continuity laying around that you can kind of create a continuity, and maybe that's just asking too much. But here the castle is standing and Count Karnstein is alive. In the last movie we saw, the castle was in ruins and Count Karnstein was a vampire. You can kind of put them together, although, as you said, the movie doesn't really work to reward us for that because no 2 actresses ever play Carmilla. No 2 actors ever play the Count. The same actors play different characters all the time. So,
well, they at least give a reason for that, though. He does say that if your physical body is destroyed, you will reincarnate in a new form, almost like Doctor Who, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's pretty cool. I like that. That was really neat. What a great instant explanation for recasting a character part is, Yeah.
Well, they ripped it off. It's a great explanation. But it has to be said. They ripped it off from Doctor Who.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. So, okay. So central to this, the other really interesting thing here, I can't think of any other Hammer movies before this where you're invited to think that the people who are on the side of the church are, really truly bad. Because in the past, you might be attracted to the vampires, the prior vampire movies. You might be attracted to them, but those on the side of the cross were good. The ones who were the vampires were bad. The vampires deserved punishment, and you were on their side when they got killed. And this movie doesn't go. This movie invites you not to believe that, because they give you Peter Cushing, and Peter Cushing is very harsh and very cruel. And so you think, when you meet him, that that's what this movie is largely going to be about, is how bad Peter Cushing was. I was really impressed in this role. I mean, he is, like you said, he's wonderful. He makes one of the worst villains of the entire Hammerscape, I think.
Yeah, not an out-and-out villain. Like you said, he's by the end of the movie, he's more of an anti-hero.
Yes.
Yeah, he's redeemed himself even though he dies.
Yeah. So
and it's
that's
good
right.
That he dies because it's not like he's reformed. I mean, it's not like he's going, oh, you know what, I've been wrong to burn all the witches. He's just like, oh, there's vampires. So, I mean, he needed to die because otherwise he was going to keep burning witches.
He reminds me.
I don't know about that. I don't know if he would have kept burning witches. I think Katie, his wife, really seemed to get through to him before, unfortunately it gets to the point where it has to come to his house, it has to be his niece who's going to be the next one to be burned. But
he's going to burn her.
Him down.
His wife talks him out of burning Maria. His wife talks him out of bugging Maria, but he's perfectly ready to see the Brotherhood decides they're going to burn Frida, and he's okay with that. And it just so happens
he's even willing to be the one
off.
Yeah, he's even wanting to be the one to do it. Like he actually, the guy says, I can go ahead and.
He volunteers, but there's hesitation, and he even in the dialogue, he keeps putting it off. He's like, let's put this off till morning.
Yeah, he's pained. He's greatly. Yeah. Well, what I enjoyed about him is that there's this. This movie gets really sophisticated in a sense where, so yes, he's that character. So he is a sadistic. He's like the bad cop in a modern, sort of bad cop serial. And then there are points where he is clashing with Anton, who doesn't approve of the Puritans, because Anton is an intellectual. But then later, he has to actually sort of do deals with Anton and negotiate and stuff like that. And you can see all the characters have wheels turning in their heads, which is great. That was really neat. But when we it's in meeting Peter Cushing that we also meet the other guy who's like the central male figure here, which is Count Karnstein. And you've been all along going, man, Peter Cushing's awfully so mean. And then Count Karnstein comes along, and he's actually literally just as bad. It just so happens that he is, in fact, satanic and smart and clever. This is a much better Count Karnstein than we've had in the prior two movies, don't we think?
Mm-hmm.
I actually kind of liked him in the beginning until he threw the one, little wench, and he's yelling, "Pray for me." It was kind of almost amusing, the sarcasm that he's yelling to the Puritans, "Oh yeah, you want to burn me? You want to burn this? Pray for me, because that's what you're supposed to do." And get
he has all this irony. He says that the burning that they do is I don't know the dialogue he uses, but he out and out says that Peter Cushing going and arresting women and burning them is basically just sexual acting out. That basically these men are sexually frustrated, and if they would find one of these wenches and find other ways of sexual activity, that they wouldn't be so inclined to go around burning women all the time. And that's really a pretty decent analysis. That's and it's funny. The way he reads, all of his lines are great. He has great lines. And then it turns out though that no, he's bad too, because he's perfectly happy.
He's perfectly happy an innocent woman.
Yeah.
And sacrifice her to the devil. Yes, he's pretty.
To the devil, because he wants power and he's bored. And luckily,
I like how the motivating factor for his evil deeds is boredom.
Yes.
This is how I imagine, maybe they're not vampires and they're not sacrificing women to Satan, But this is how I imagine, like, the ultra-wealthy turning to, like, drugs or things like that in real life is usually like, oh, I'm bored. I have all this wealth. I have to go experience something naughty.
Yes.
And so Satanism and vampirism, as far as Count Karnstein is concerned.
Yes. And it's cool that he actually goes that step that other people aren't willing to go. I mean, he, his retainer has created a kind of a little show for him, a little satanic ritual that is supposed to amuse him, like somebody going to Bloodfest, at Atomic Cafe or something. And he's like, I'm not interested in this. This is stupid. Here, go away. And then he sacrifices the girl.
Yeah, you think he's going to let the girl go, and it's like, oh, no.
I never thought he was going to let the girl go. But I never actually thought that she was going anywhere. But I was surprised that he just stabbed her. That was a truly shocking thing for me. I was surprised by that. So now they've established. Okay.
And by the way, so we have to say that. So then he kills the girl. Her blood somehow manages to drip through to a body of Carmilla, which I don't understand how that happened exactly.
It's inside that crypt. It's inside. I mean, that.
Right, but I mean,
sarcophagus.
Isn't that what they called it?
The what?
Isn't it called like a scullery? It's basically a cemetery that's inside. It's like a crypt.
Yeah,
like a
or
mausoleum.
crypt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and so
they weren't making floors that well back then.
I know, right? No, exactly. So anyway, so that brings her, because he's saying, Satan, show yourself to me or whatever. That brings Mircalla or Carmilla back, and then so she's now back, and they're going to be like all together, and I don't know, and then she bites him, and suddenly he's a vampire. So so that was really interesting, but I didn't. Like I say, I get that that didn't bother you, but to me, it's like kind of like, okay, what's the point of bringing her in if you're not going to have her be a character? But I guess it's just a cameo, except that it's not the same actress, so it doesn't really feel like even a cameo.
Right. No, that is strange. But
it is Mircalla. It's not Camilla in this one. For some reason, I kept thinking Camilla was the grandmother, but it is Mircalla, and we were talking about the. How there's no congruency between the films, and it seems like, they're actually, the whole thing with the anagrams, and it's got to be like a mother-daughter relation, so it's like, okay, so Mircalla was first, and then it was Carmilla in Lust for a Vampire, because if Mircalla is actually the first one, because she's the one in this one, she's grandma, great grandma.
Oh wow, that never occurred to me.
Trend.
That never dawned on me, Jamie, that this is. I thought they were just simply screwing up which was the fake name and which was the real name, but you're suggesting no, these are different vampires.
They're all anagrams. They're all different names, but it's all the same name, just jumbled,
But are they the same person? That's my question.
No, they're not supposed to be the same person, because even in Lust for a Vampire, when they show the picture of her, they show the tomb and everything. He goes the creepy teacher. The creepier of the more unattractive teacher. What was his name?
Yes, Ralph Bates.
Ralph Bates, that's the actor.
Yeah. He researches, and that's Marcel in that one. That's Camilla in that one, and he's like, "Oh, I was talking about your grandma or your mother," and so they do show where, everybody's got the same name, and there is kind of like a, congruency in that one with the names and everything, and trying to figure out who's grandma and who's, aunt and who's mom.
So that's really remarkable,
Jamie. Vampire Who's on first now, because who is the first? Who is the first vampire in this family? When you
Mircalla.
Now I'm even more confused.
I guess we should have watched it in chronological.
It's got to be Mircalla. She's the first one, because this is the prequel to the other two, and she's the one that when they show they show her little crypt thing, and he
was 1547. Died in 15.
You're right. She's the.
Yeah. Died in 1547.
I never thought about that. I have never thought about that.
Well, I'm more surprised he's not like Grandma, but I guess that would kind of change the whole movie.
Indeed.
The Count looked just like Jimmy Fallon, by the way. I kept calling him Jimmy Fallon.
I think so, too. I kept saying the same exact thing. I actually grew up in the neighboring town of Jimmy Fallon. My sisters were friends with him growing up. Yeah, and he does. He looks like a young Jimmy Fallon. Like Jimmy Fallon's high school pictures, that's how his hair was.
Young Jimmy Fallon, that cracks me up. I think they're the same age.
Yep.
Wow. Jimmy Fallon, and when he was graduating high school, he kind of has the same haircut as Count Karnstein. So it's kind of
this
funny.
guy who plays Count Karnstein, that's somebody else we should talk about. So he's really fantastic. He would have been they had talked about recasting Dracula. In those last two couple Dracula movies, Satanic Rites of Dracula, I think Dracula makes sense to be the age that Christopher Lee is. It's fine. But it would have been so great for some of the others to go ahead and recast him with this younger actor. They could have made the character more vital, because this Count, he gets around, he travels around, he's scheming, he's laughing, he's plotting, he's doing cool stuff, sacrificing.
Well, he's an altogether different kind of vampire than Christopher Lee is. I mean, Christopher Lee is he's this big, imposing guy who, is basically sex and death on two legs. This guy is more like traditionally sexy. Yeah. And he's more, I think, of like a Bela Lugosi type. Well, not even a Bela Lugosi, like an Anne Rice type vampire.
Yeah, this guy's kind of a rocker, really. I mean, he really is very at home in the 70s. He does seem to be a rock and roll vampire, and that's you could see this guy actually doing what Anne Rice describes, where Lestat becomes part of a rock group, and I can't remember what they were called. I think they're called Lestat the Vampire, actually, and yes, this is a proto Lestat, I think, here. So that's a good point. He's not that much like Christopher Lee. Having said that, if they had recast Dracula with this guy, I would not care. I think he would have done a really good job. He's got a good voice. He's got good,
Unfortunately, I don't think Damien Thomas would ever take another Hammer job, though. He talks about how little he was paid, and
really?
And he was pretty much yeah. He was like,
there's a really great.
He couldn't even cough out how lousy the pay was for it, but he was a really great.
Oh, did you guys see the documentary, the new documentary about the Twin
There's a really, really great documentary on the DVD for this.
Wow.
Which,
So tell us about it. What else did you learn about this movie from that?
Oh,
because I'd like to get that documentary.
The documentary is actually my endorsement for the week. I mean,
it's
great.
Right.
It's got. And if you want, we can wait and go into it then. But I mean, you learn a lot about that.
You can explain it. Yeah, that sounds fun.
It's got, they go into the writing. Save it? Just to save it?
Yeah, save it. We'll get into it in the endorsements.
Okay.
So, that's fantastic. The one.
I don't think Damien Thomas was going back to taking. We were talking about going into him being Dracula, or something, another villain. But he was actually bred for stage. I mean, that's what his,
sure.
He did. And I guess, they talk a lot, going back to the documentary, you got a little bit more behind the scenes on each individual person in the cast. Do
you ever think about the fact that in these movies, you've got these characters who, you mentioned that this actor, Thomas, is trained for the stage. And I think it was it was either Peter Cushing or Vincent Price who had said that all those actors of their generation who were trained as classical actors, a certain kind of enunciation, a certain kind of accent, even if you're an American. And it meant that by the 60s and 70s, the only jobs they could really do that still had a place at the movie theaters was in these costume dramas, which is why so many of them wound up in horror movies. 'Cause it's odd, isn't it? I mean, now I don't even know if there's a place. We're now how long ago? We're now 40 years later. There's really no place for these guys. for somebody who like has that sort of stage diction, like Vincent Price. I don't know what you would do. Well, yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, Kenneth Branagh never sounds quite normal when he's playing a role where he's just supposed to sound like a regular guy.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sound quite right. I think, although I like the movie where he
Anthony Hopkins seems to be able to somehow work and.
Yeah. I mean, if you think of him as Treves, in The Elephant Man, he's very, he just sounds like an educated guy. That's true. That's absolutely right.
Admittedly, he does show up in a lot of like stagey parts. I mean, he's the
I just think of him as Hannibal Lecter. That's all I can.
But that's a stagey part. That's a stagey part.
It's a totally stagey part.
That's basically Vincent That's a character Vincent Price would have played if he had been, current.
Well, think of John Houseman.
Anthony Hopkins. He plays Odin in Thor, and he plays Sir John Talbot in The Wolfman, and those are also kind of costume parts.
Yes.
So maybe I
and he plays C.S. Lewis in Shadowlands.
Who did he play in Shadowlands?
What?
Who did he play in Shadowlands?
It's a story, isn't it, based on C.S. Lewis?
Oh, of course.
Like,
Right. So, all right. So, where does that leave us? We talked about the Puritans.
I want to talk about Anton, because I think Anton is interesting. I mean, I think it's so funny that he is literally rides in on a white horse to save Maria from being burned at the stake at the end. He's just kind of the stereotypical, hero there. But I really liked that he says the whole bit about how Maria's nice and all, but Frida is more interesting because she's like multidimensional. Because to me, that's so typical of how men, and not just men, I think women too, see like the bad girl or the bad boy, you know what I mean, as being like more complex and more interesting versus the good person, which is kind of boring. I was just like, I just love that he just puts it out there for you to go.
Thank you for pointing out that thing about how we tend to believe that somebody who's bad is more complex. Because you're right, he does say something like that. There's something more there, whereas this nicer person...
And he can tell them apart because of Frida's fire burning the food.
Right.
But what's funny about that is it's purely a fallacy. It's completely a fallacy, because we all play parts with different people. So, like, you might spend a couple of years in one place and you're one way, and a couple of years in another place and you're another way. But one thing I know for sure is that just because you can't quite get through to somebody doesn't mean there's anything really there. That this is something that it took me a long time to figure out is, you can crack at somebody's exterior for a long time, and you might actually crack it open and find out often, oh, well, it actually doesn't run that deep once you, that happens all the time. But you're right, he gives into this fallacy that because Frida is dark, that she must be, deep.
I don't really get the sense that she is that deep because she seems just kind of like a
No, she's not that deep. she's really not. She's just sort of. I'm sorry. What's that, Jamie? I'm sorry.
Oh, I said party. I just kept saying party girl.
No, she is. Yeah. She's just. I mean, she's more conventionally modern in her. What can I say? She's more sexually licentious. She's more interested in all of these kind of free behaviors, and Maria is a more traditional girl. But I don't get the impression either of them are particularly complicated or would spend a lot of time really, really contemplating all of this. I'm not mocking Maria. She seems like a wonderful girl too. But
they don't really give her too much time to actually talk. I mean, all she talks about is I defended Frida from Uncle Lyle, who beat me because he didn't know where she was, and then
oh my gosh, isn't that awful?
Pretending to be. Yeah, she's like, I'm going to get beaten again.
The fact that Maria would be like, oh, yes, well, Uncle was going after you, and so I let him beat me because he thought he was punishing you. And she's just so giving. You know, you're like, oh, well, this poor pathetic creature, what a wonderful, I mean, she seems like a wonderful girl, but you're like, also she's a doormat. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I don't know, Julia, would you let your...
Like, she kind of, I feel bad for her. I do, like, you know,
well, of course.
Anton doesn't give her the time of day, even though she's, like, all pining for him because he thinks her, kind of, the bitchy sister.
Yes, and lest we've noticed...
The one with the goods.
Well, this movie is the perfect thought experiment because, lest we've noticed, the good sister and the bad sister, twins. They look exactly alike. It's not as though you're going to miss out on one or the other. They are precisely identical. They even wear identical, like, green dresses. They wear identical chiffon dressing gowns. They are the same. And so it's really just a matter of, do you want the nice one or do you want the sadistic one? It's up to you. I don't know. So yes, I should mention that.
I know we were.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm not going anywhere.
Our good versus evil type thing. We were talking before how there's no real, except for maybe Anton. But I still think, like, Vile's wife. Is her name Kate? I think her name is Katie. In my opinion, she's like the conscience throughout the movie.
Yes.
She's, there's some foreshadowing. She's the one, don't let them see your niece now as she's clutching her, crucifix while she sleeps, and she's the one who kind of convinces him that, she, like, she says, like, the great line, instead of you think you've been helping beat the devil out of the girls, maybe you've helped beat the devil in. And it's true. Maybe, I guess according to Karnstein's little, spiel about you have to have a little devil inside you, but doesn't, like, technically don't most people have a little devil inside
I also
them?
don't think he's telling the truth. I don't think you can necessarily believe Count Karnstein when he says that you have to be evil to become a vampire.
I think he just doesn't drain her, and that's what because that's what happens.
Who knows? I'm not clear on what makes you a vampire, but I'm not prepared to believe that Karnstein has given us the right rule here, because we have lots of rules of the Karnstein universe, but we've never heard this one before. This idea that you have to be evil to become a vampire, whereas if you're good, you just die.
Well, that is based off of legitimate. There's
folklore.
Vampire folklore. They're not pulling that out of their butts.
No, it's a good point, but we've never heard it before in the series.
No.
So it's like it's just suddenly appearing. So it may very well be true. It may very well be true in this movie, in fact, but it comes out of nowhere.
I never heard the burning thing until this movie. Like,
well, no, the last movie
vampires.
had it where all of a sudden they're like, there is no death for us in fire, and so they set fire to the castle, and the vampires are fine. They're like, fine, burn it down. That's fine.
Some of those little, like, quips that Karnstein does, like, he's got, like, there's a couple faces he does where, like, I don't know, it almost seems inappropriate. And then at one point when the villagers come, like, with the crucifix, they've got crucifixes and stakes. Oh, geez, And then he turns to Frida, who's obviously scared, and he's like, what, are you scared of that beautiful white flesh melting?
Yes.
She kind of looks at him like, yeah, kind of.
You know what bothered me during the finale? This is such a random thing, but Count Karnstein's slave is so loyal to a fault, and you would think like a guy who there's no doubt bought and shipped over there, and probably maybe Count Karnstein is good to him, but I don't buy that.
Right.
I think if he's like if I'm that guy and he's like here's a machete, go fend off the Puritan band, I'd be like, screw you, Whitey, and take off.
I agree when he says you stay here.
I'm with you.
No, it's true that there's not much reason for Joachim. But, look, we don't know Joachim's story.
I was really upset that they have that in there. But, I guess they're just not that enlightened yet in 1971.
Yeah, you thought this is the point where Count Karnstein is going to be enlightened? Out of all of the possible things that he would be enlightened about. racial relations in 18th century Europe.
No, but I mean the film itself, though, just including the one black character is going to be not only the sacrificial one, but he can't even speak. I mean, it's just like...
that's true.
It's not exactly unrealistic that a black person in Eastern Europe at that point in time would be a slave. That doesn't really bother me. It's just his level of loyalty to the
troubling
is
and
astounding
inhuman
to me.
I agree. There's some problems there with that we've created this African character, and he doesn't really seem to have much of a mind of his own, or he's loyal to a fault. And so we could do some work and come up with a backstory for Joachim so that he that he's that way. Who knows? Maybe Karnstein saved his mom when he was very young. Who knows why he's so loyal? But that's a good point. I mean, thank you for bringing that up, Drew, because it is weird to watch some of these movies and go, wow, so race relations not really the same place they are in 2012 and 1971.
No, it's a little bit of casual racism, and it's enjoyable, and it's disconcerting in an otherwise enjoyable film.
Have you seen Old Dracula with David Niven?
No.
This is the one where David Niven is Dracula, by the way, and that's kind of cool, except for that it's a really stupid movie. And basically, he wants to bring back his vampire bride. He brings her back, but for whatever reason, he's used black blood. I'm not making this up. And so she comes back as a really beautiful black actress. And so David Niven has to get used to now being in a biracial vampire marriage. I'm not making this up.
That's funny.
It sounds funny. It's actually not as good as you might hope. It's actually an embarrassing 1970s movie. But, that you will never, ever see. This is not a movie that is aching for a DVD release, let me tell you. There are a few things out there where you're like, hey, how come that doesn't come out? I will tell you, sometimes, because they're embarrassing. I think that's why you don't see a lot of Love at First Bite anymore, because the racial humor in Love at First Bite is painful. It is just so kind of ugly and casual, like Drew was saying, that you're like, holy mackerel, I guess you could just cut a lot of those scenes out and maybe and re-release it. But
well, in the defense of this movie, at least there's some very, very awesome gore delivered by Joaquin at the end of that. Like he that's some great. This movie has the
when his chest gets punctured,
the big bosoms and everything. But that Hammer is also known for gore, and this movie definitely delivers on those counts too.
Oh my God!
And also the beheading of Frida, which is quite very swiftly done by
that made me so. That made me way happier than it possibly should have, especially upon learning that the way that they did that is they used for her neck was a big German sausage.
Oh, sweet! That's hilarious. So this movie wraps up basically with an attack on the castle by the Puritans. So basically the intellectual Anton and the leaders and the church leader, which is Peter Cushing, gather together to go attack the satanic royalty, which is the Count. And so intellectuals and the church gather to attack the royals, and they all go. They ride out and they invade the castle. The castle is one of the best castle sets we've seen in the entire Dracula series, entire Hammer Vampire series. It's really good. This is not an Elstree set. This is not a Bray set. This is a Pinewood set. Pinewood is where they did Star Wars. They got room and they got lots of things to make big sets with. And this is a beautiful looking set. And yes, Peter Cushing hacks Frida's head off with one swoop of this big-ass machete. that he gets, like, they're all getting their weapons sort of prepared before this in this wonderful scene where they're all just like, here, shine this up, and yeah, he beheads Frida, and it's great. And he works with that head really well. Peter Cushing really knows how to work a prop because he's carrying the head around, but he makes sure that it never faces towards the camera. But he does it so perfectly. It's really, really great. He's a masterful technician. How does he die? Now I've completely lost track of how Peter Cushing actually died in this thing.
He falls. Karnstein throws him off the balcony.
Yeah,
he hits him in the back with the little, what is that?
The axe. Well, he throws the axe at him.
It's like a battle
Well,
axe.
that was kind of lame because Peter Cushing misses when he goes, you got one chance to get me, and so Peter Cushing goes at him with the axe and misses.
Yes.
I was kind of annoyed by, and then he throws the axe at him and gets him in the bed.
What a great turn of events, because usually, if this had been a Hammer vampire movie from the previous decade,
yeah,
Peter Cushing would have lopped off the Count's head, and that credits would have rolled.
Sure.
And here, Vile gets his. What
year? What year was the Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires? The one that we watched. I think it was one of the first movies we did.
That's later than this.
I know, but it can't be much later because it's still so let's see, Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires. I can get that answer. It was our second episode of the podcast, 1974. So just 3 years later, in fact, we will see Peter Cushing playing Van Helsing in a much bigger action movie with Dracula. But Peter Cushing is a much better action hero in this movie than in that one, for sure. I mean, is
he really a hero?
Oh, yes. Oh, you mean in this movie, it generally is a
Yeah,
hero?
he doesn't do anything. He doesn't get anything accomplished except he kills Frida. That's it.
He kills Frida? That's a big deal. She's a vampire.
He rides around on a horse.
But he knew that if he killed the Count, that Frida would have been released from herself.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
And so he goes and why couldn't he couldn't have done something to keep Frida at bay for a little bit while they go and kill the Count. And going back to that spot where you say, the Count gives him this is your one and only chance, and if you miss, basically Satan gets your soul, which I was kind of glad that Peter Cushing died. Because
he deserves what he gets. It's true.
Yeah, in a way, he
definitely deserves what he definitely gets.
Girls.
He definitely gets what he deserves. He definitely I don't think I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason. I think when you say action hero, he has more action.
Truly. That's. I'm just saying that when it comes to Peter Cushing, in these scenes where we're throwing axes around and stuff, it's not just Peter Cushing's fault. Admittedly, this actor is getting older, right? That's fine. But the thing of it is, when you think of in Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, there were action scenes in there with almost no blocking at all. I'm not talking about the kung fu scenes, but the scenes between Van Helsing and Dracula, it's like they didn't have a choreographer to do those scenes, and so almost nothing happens. Whereas here, there's a lot of business. The stuff with the axe, that's all pretty complicated, and I love how it goes wrong. How he throws the axe or he misses, and the vampire throws it back. I mean, that's all really, really great. I should mention, by the way, that's what wraps this movie up, because both of the twins are there. The evil twin gets her head lopped off. The good twin, I was worried that she was going to get herself killed, but no, instead she ends up being a hostage for the Count, and finally Anton manages to kill the Count. And
I'm also happy that they didn't kiss at the end.
They did not kiss.
I was happy they do not kiss. And I thought that was kind of a big thing because, you're like, oh, it's okay. The twins are just interchangeable, huh, Anton?
Right.
I feel like
That's a wonderful point. It's a really good point. I think that's fantastic because he has not been hanging out with her, and he can tell the difference, but so he doesn't really know this woman. I think that's fantastic.
Well, that would have been nice to have him go, You know, now that I realize that you actually are a better person and more lovable than your sister, you're starting to really grow on me.
Right.
But
the ending does have a lot going on. Like that's the one real flaw this movie has, is there's almost so much going on in the ending that certain things, like what you just said, that there maybe should have been that moment where he acknowledged that she was the better woman. But, you know, so a lot of stuff I feel like they could have been added into this movie kind of get lost in the rush to exterminate the Count. And
it's an action movie problem that in the last act you've got to do. Everything has to sort of circle around a lot of action, which is okay. But I mean, I love the fact that part of what so much is going on, and again, I think this movie is really good compared with a lot of the other ones, is look at all these, I don't know what I would call them, dynamic pairs, what have you, Frida versus Maria. Every one of these characters gets at least one scene where they argue with one another. Frida versus Maria, Anton versus Gustav, Gustav versus the Count, Gustav versus his wife, Gustav and Anton deciding to conspire against one another, Frida and Maria conspiring against their uncle. All of they just keep flipping these characters over and over again and say, hey, let's see what happens when we put these two characters together, and let's see what happens when these two go together. It's really, there's thinking going on here. You know, and you compare that with, I don't know, Horror of Dracula, which I think is a fantastic movie, but truly does not spend a great deal of time thinking about what any of those characters wants, in a sense where I can tell you what every one of these characters wants, and it's all sensible to you right away. So that's impressive. This is a much more sophisticated vampire movie. Well, we should probably wrap it up. I want to get our final thoughts and our endorsements, and then remind everybody to vote for us at iTunes. So let's go in the same direction that we went in at the first. Start with Mr. Drew. Final thoughts and endorsements, if you have one.
Well, this is definitely one of the better latter day Hammers. It's not my personal favorite of those is Captain Kronos, which I hope we do as a episode at one point. But this is up there. This is really good. Honestly, talking about it, I would say that I now like it better than even when I was previously thinking about it. Because I enjoyed it while I was watching, but have had this discussion with a lot of y'all, it's made me notice maybe some of the finer points of it. Would I recommend this to somebody that is not really into vampire movies? Probably not. This is a kind of the same thing that all these Karnstein movies. This is a deep track level of nerdery. This is like, if you like vampire movies, you're probably gonna like this movie. If you don't like vampire movies, this is probably not for you, because this is a heaping helping of a lot of stuff that people associate with vampire movies.
That's a good point.
But,
that's a really good point.
It's a good flick, and was an excellent way to venture into the Halloween season, since we are inching closer to October now. My endorsement this week is actually for the DVD of Twins of Evil, and more appropriately for the documentary, which is on the DVD, which is The Flesh and the Flesh and the Fury, and it's an excellent documentary. It's got Martin Scorsese on it. It's got Joe Dante on it. It's got they interview a lot of people from this film and other Hammer films. They talk about the stylistic differences and changes that were going on with Hammer in the late 60s and early 70s. They talk about the writing of Carmilla and how that shaped this trilogy of films. And they go into a lot. I mean, it's just an excellent documentary, and really surprising considering that this is kind of a minor vampire gem.
Yeah.
And I
totally want to see that now.
Very,
I
very
absolutely
pleased
want
with
to see
it.
this.
It's worth it.
Wow. Thank
Very,
you very much.
pleased with it. No problem.
All right, Miss Julia, final thoughts and endorsements.
Well, the only thing I want to say that I didn't already say is just that it should have been called Twin of Evil rather than Twins of Evil, because really there's just the one twin that's of evil.
Not as catchy.
Right.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe not. And then, I will say that I said last week that I was going to watch Revolution, and the new show Revolution, and I watched that first episode. That was really pretty good. So I'm excited to watch a few more and see how it continues. If it continues to be a good show, but it's a really interesting concept. What happens if every single, and I'm really curious how on earth it happened. But that is the mystery of the show: is how does every single electronic or battery operated or pretty much anything automated at all device in the world go out, including like cars and flashlights and everything. So that's an interesting. And then what happens when that happens? So it's interesting. And then I am going to tune into 666 Park Avenue and see how that is, because that has Terry O'Quinn and Vanessa Williams, and it sounds like an interesting show. So I'm excited about a few new shows on the fall lineup.
Outstanding. Jamie, I hope you had a good time your first time joining us, and I'd love to get your final thoughts and endorsements.
Well, would I recommend the movie? Probably. I guess I'm not quite the nerd that my husband is, but I've grown quite fond of the Hammer movies, not just for the Skinamax factor, but because they actually are pretty entertaining. And even if not for being serious, I mean, they definitely have quite a few kind of what we call that like the master pancake thing. You can actually really cheese it up and add in your own little ad libs while they're, saying horrible things. Like at one point when Frida feeds for the first time on the peasant victim that Karnstein has captured, she suddenly bites her breast, and Karnstein's got this fangy, toothy grin, like she bit her boob, and it's kind of funny. I actually, there were parts where I kind of laughed out loud, and I'm sure it wasn't intended to be that type of humor, but it cracked me up. So I'd say I'd recommend this one more so than the other of the series. Well, I liked the Vampire Lovers more so than Lust for a Vampire, but this one and Lust for a Vampire, this one and Vampire Lovers out of the series, I think, are the two better ones. So, but my endorsement for the week, kind of shameless, but a little shameless self-promotion. Never hurts anyone.
You can do log rolling. We're all for that. Danger Cakes has our very first album coming out in the next month, so keep a lookout for Dessert First. It'll be available on iTunes as well as in stores nationally and hopefully internationally, which is pretty exciting. And also like to, since we have been talking so much about the whole Carmilla thing and women in power, and that's kind of why, it's not just the fact that she's a lesbian, but it's so threatening that, there are these not only vampires, but they're women who are threatening to men, and, it's still kind of in play nowadays. Sexism is still very rampant, especially in the workplace, and I don't know if anyone's read it, but Tina Fey's memoir came out a few months ago called Bossy Pants.
Yeah, we have that. I love that.
Basically, it was great. I absolutely loved it. I finished it and immediately started reading it again. I felt like not only was it comedic, but it actually does offer really great advice to women in the workplace, especially women who are looking to be more than just, a peon. So that's probably my endorsement, as well as I have two others. Actually, they're kind of all one the same. I'm endorsing my husband, Mr. Drew Edwards, whose birthday is Friday, September 28th.
Aww.
So, yep. So if you're out there in Facebook land, shoot him a little message saying you're just as happy as I am that he was born.
I thought you were going to auction off dates or something. You're like, I'm endorsing my husband. If you have the means, I highly recommend picking him up.
You can buy one at Kmart. But he and also, nothing says trick or treat like a copy of Halloween Man. So it's the perfect time for giving. And I know he's got a couple books coming up. He's got the Halloween Man Super Deformed, as well as the Halloween Man, The Invisible Man, and Bad
that was,
Religion.
by the way, so Halloween Man, The Invisible Man, is that in a trade paperback right now, Drew?
Yes, with our intro.
Oh, I see. I haven't read it yet. I need to go get that. So
that's my favorite of all of
the
Halloween Man so far.
Oh, I'm blushing. Not that you can tell because it's a podcast. You can get these at indieplanet.com, folks.
Okay. Have you thought about releasing, or are you already releasing on electronic? I'm sorry, I spoke over you, Jamie. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay. No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I wasn't saying anything important.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really glad that you could be with us. My final thoughts.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I've talked as much as I could possibly talk about Twins of Evil, other than I totally recommend it, and I can't wait to see the documentary that Drew mentioned. And my endorsements this week, I've got some new books on the way that I'll get to next week. But I just now finished reading Ghost Story by Peter Straub, which came out in 1979, and it is such a wonderful book. Peter Straub, if you don't know him, is an American writer, and he has such a fantastic command of the English language and really fantastic prose. He is a killer, consummate, spooky horror writer. Really fantastic. And Ghost Story is one of the best. It was a bestseller back in 79 and was a movie by 1981, so very shortly thereafter. So my next thing is I'm going to watch the movie Ghost Story. So I'm kind of partying like it's 1979 over here. And that's my endorsement for the week. All right, here is what you must do if you are listening to the Castle Dracula podcast. You must like us on Facebook, and also we'd appreciate it if you'd vote for us on iTunes and pass the link around to your friends, because we want to get more listeners, and we'll be back very soon with some cool stuff for the Halloween season. Thank you so much, everybody, for being with us, and we'll talk to you on the Facebook page. Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Bye.
Night.
Thank you. Bye.